Hello, this is the last video on the seed experiment. It's been a full 6 day. On the right we have the North Pole exposed seeds after 6 days of growing in the exact same period of time in the South Pole over here. Now you notice we have a large number of dead seeds on our North Pole over here and very few on our South Pole. Here on the North Pole you notice it is a matted clump that always happens. Now you have to tug on them a little bit to get them out of the jar, but also you'll notice over here on the South Pole alfalfa sprouts are nice and fluffy. I wish you could smell and taste them. I mean, of course, I've tasted them countless times since I performed this experiment countless times, but I'll do it for you here at the end of the video. Smell is also radically different. North Pole smell horrible, South Pole smell just like perfect leafy greens. Exactly what you would want. Now I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, yeah, there's a lot more volume here and a lot fewer dead seeds, but on the right over here we have the North Pole exposed seeds that are greener. But what has happened is that the phase shift that these were induced under before they were started to be grown, it caused stunted growth. Now I showed you in a prior video where the North Pole exposed seeds actually started off very slow and the South Pole seeds started off very fast. They kind of meet up around about day 2 or 3, not really, but they're very close, and then things radically shoot off, and then the North Pole seeds, exposed seeds, undergo this clumping effect. Now you're thinking, well, these are greener than these over here, so these are more developed. But you have to think that there are a lot more dead seeds on the North Pole, a lot more stunted growth. Just think of like a little person. It's like, well, you know, it's fully grown, and that's what you're thinking over here. It's like, well, these are a lot greener. Yeah, but these are a lot larger, a lot more full grown, a lot more robust. Now, if I gave these another day and a half of exposure, they would be as green as the South Pole and the North Pole exposed seeds over here. But over here we have more volume, far fewer dead seeds. They smell great, they taste great. They're a lot larger, and if I had given them one more day to grow, it's like one of those tall, I'm trying to think, there's the name for the type of German women that grew up to be like 8 feet tall, and they're just, they have a growth spurt, and they basically, it seems like they never stop growing. There's a crude analogy there, but of course you can't smell them, but very acidic, almost chemical smell on the North Pole exposed seeds, and on the South, perfect green smell, exactly what you'd expect, what you'd want to eat. Now I'm going to taste these again as if I haven't done it before many times, but very watery, very mealy, horrible, chemical taste, just despicable. I can never eat the North Pole exposed sprouts. They're horrible. You see all these dead seeds we have here on the North Pole? So like I said, you can't be fooled by the greenery on the North Pole seeds. They have been in their magnetodielectric phase shift, been told that this is the max growth that they have. So, you know, tons of them are dead, they're a lot more stunted. It's like, well, yeah, they're more green, but what has happened is that they have been programmed, as an analogy, that this 6-day period is their full cycle, whereas the South Pole seeds over here have been programmed to say, no, keep getting bigger, we'll start greening out in a couple more days. We're going to get bigger and bigger and healthier, and we're going to green out, you know, like our North Pole buddies have over here, but we're going to do it a day and a half later. So do not be confused with the greenery on the North Pole. So now take the South Pole exposed alfalfa, chewing on them. Wonderful, delicious. You can just taste the vitamins and minerals. Awesome, incredible, perfect, exactly what you'd expect. Very fresh, very delicious alfalfa sprouts. Of course, some people hate alfalfa sprouts, but the premise is that perfect taste, horrible taste. Smell awful, smell wonderful. Tons of dead seeds, very few dead seeds. This is a bundled mash. It always forms into this. You see this? Look at this compared to the South Pole alfalfa. You see this? Always the same. So these seeds are still going. They are in their brains, as an analogy, genetically, under the impression that they need to go another day and a half before they start greening, like they're stunted little person seeds over here, because these have stunted growth. It's like, okay, we've reached our max. We're going to bloom. We're going to green early because we're done. Our genetic disposition is such that we believe that it is time for us to sprout, to green out, excuse me. So this is the experiment. You want to try it yourself? Go ahead and do it. I hope you found, I think this is video number 7 in this series, but this is the last one. I could have actually let them go for another day. It didn't make any difference. I could have had a lot more greenery on the South Pole. No big deal, but I told you exactly what happens. So another day doesn't really matter. These would have greened up more than their North Pole cousins who've greened up, but, you know, tons of them are dead over here and stunted growth and just a matted mess. They stink, they taste awful, they're despicable. You can't do anything with these but throw them in the garbage. These, you want to throw some dressing on, throw it in your salad and eat them. You know, they taste great. I'm going to try the North Pole seeds again. They're always the same. They're just horrible. Watery, mealy, chemically. Tastes have like a mild chemical taste, kind of like you forgot to wash out the soap in the bottom of your bowl. You just have that rancid chemical aftertaste. Just, wonderful. Smell great, tastes great. So, this has been the magnetic, we call it gotta call it Jack and the Beanstalk experiment, talking about magic seeds. It's been the magnetodielectric phase shift. The South Pole we have compression, and on the North Pole we have rarefaction. Magnetodielectric phase shift and the genetic. So look, now you spread these out some. We're talking about, look at all these dead seeds. I mean, can you see that? So, just look, nothing happened here. Let's look at the dead seeds on the South Pole. Doesn't matter how you grow them, even if you don't grow them. But see, oh, look, there we go. What? Exactly. How amazing is that, folks? I know there's no other crap like this on YouTube. Is there? No. Isn't this fascinating? If you don't think this is fascinating, there's something wrong. Oh, I forgot some of the more dead seeds that were under there. Let's rake them forward and look. Radically different. If you like this video, you could drop me a buck or two. I would say this video, you shouldn't tell me to jump off a cliff, because I think this is one hell of a fascinating experiment that I said you do need some larger block magnets. You can't be using little ultra-thin wafer jobbies, and you can't be using hard drive magnets for exposure. And like I said, if you grow them, as I told you in a prior video, underneath the magnetic field, you get you know, a slightly more radical results than this. In other words, while they're growing, you have a magnet positioned underneath them, but this is seed-only exposure. But look how radically different. These seeds both came into the same package. Always will be the same. Amazing, isn't it? Come on, YouTube, you gotta know that this is awesome. Anyway, I'll catch you later, and thanks for joining me at the end of this magnetodielectric phase shift experiment, to showing a genetic, radically different genetic anomalies just from exposing the seeds to magnetic centrifugal reciprocations. Now, neodymium iron boron will work on a samarium cobalt. Ask me about the magnets if you want to. What are the best for growing? It'd be 2x2 by 1 inch neodymium N50 Gauss. So, catch you later. Thanks. Okay, more than a few of you have asked me how to grow quote-unquote magic seeds. We had to call this Jack and the Beanstalk experiment, except for real, right? Here we have a 2 inch by 2 inch by 1 inch neodymium iron boron lattice magnet. It's N50 Gauss. These used to be pretty expensive. Chinese basically control all the neodymium in the world. There's tons of it in the United States, but the idiot government of the United States doesn't like the environmental hippies don't like us to mine anything like, you know, rare earth metals like neodymium. So essentially Americans are all, the whole world is slaves to China when it comes to getting neodymium for making neodymium magnets. But what it is on every magnet, doesn't matter if it's square or not, the field is always circular, okay? Just like water, it doesn't matter if water comes out of a square hose or a round hose, it'll eventually, puddle and pool into a circle. It's the same thing with divergent magnetism. The field is always circular inside the magnet. But if you actually take a Gauss meter, you can see it. Here you have a centripetal point of the returning magnetism from the other side or the other pole. But what I do is I'll actually put the seeds in a little paper packet, a couple teaspoons like on the seeds here, and I'll stick them in a little paper packet and I'll fold it up and put a little piece of tape on it. What I'll do is I'll lay that little packet, which is about as long as a cigarette and most of the way, and about half an inch long, and I'll lay it along one of the edges. Right, I'll just tape it there. I only need to leave it there for a few hours, and that's the experiment that I'm doing currently. So just 3 or 4 hours. Some of the larger seeds require, a few more hours of placement on the centrifugal edge of the magnet. Of course, first you need to check. Like here, I've got it marked. This is South Pole. This is the North Pole. So what I'm doing is I'm laying the seed packet right along this because I don't want to put it here. I do never want to put it on the side because that totally affects things. The actual field here of the dielectric inertial plane, you have intersecting polarities actually reciprocating partially the intermediate pressures of, and like I said, you can check this. This is not my premise. You can actually see this, not see it, but you can actually read it out with the Gauss meter. You have a high Gauss meter at the centripetal point. It gets weak and it gets really, really, really strong. The strongest point is right at the edge of every pole, quote unquote, of every magnet right here. And so that's where you tape your seeds at, right there. A few hours. You can also do seed exposure during growth. It's a little bit more radical by 30%. What I'll do is I'll put this underneath a plate. I'll tape it on there so it doesn't move. And then here I'll have my jar and I'll actually prop it up like this. Okay, see I've got the jar marked red for North Pole, and here's this. So I've just got it propped up a little bit. We'll put a cloth underneath here to prop it up, and I'll grow them underneath here like this. Right now I'm not doing growth underneath the magnet. This was seed-only exposure, and I did 3 hours of exposure of alfalfa seeds, which is what we're growing in this experiment. Results are always the same, so a lot of you people have asked that question. And there's the answer. And remember, it doesn't matter what shape the magnet is. The divergent and convergent centrifugal and centripetal fields are the same. It doesn't matter if you have a pyramid magnet looking top down like this. The field is always the same. The magnetic field right there, that would be our centrifugal boundary pressure, max pressure in Gauss. And here would be our centripetal right there. So it doesn't matter if it's a pyramid-shaped magnet or a cube-shaped magnet like this one. Like I said, these now I think they're 38 or 40 bucks. Remember, these are all ceramic, by the way. If you drop them, they'll break. It's not like a big hunk of steel or something, so they will break. These are insanely powerful. If you dare get 2 of these close and you get your fingers like this, oh man, you're so fooked. You're so fooked. Don't even dare get them close together. They're insanely powerful. They will hurt the piss out of you. And once when I wasn't looking, I was distracted by somebody, and boy, I got hurt. Anyway, thanks for watching another video from the Angry Photographer, and I'll keep doing the seed experiment, and I'll show you the end results. Hello, another video here. I think this is video number 4. Right now we have 25 hours of exposure. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. There is seed-only exposure. These seeds were exposed for 4 hours. The green was exposed to 4 hours of South Pole centrifugal magnetism, and the red marked jar was exposed to North Pole centrifugal magnetism for 4 hours also. You get more drastic results by roughly 25% or so if you're doing exposure constantly during growth. However, you do need large honking magnets like the 2" by 2" by 1" neodymium iron boron in 50 Gauss magnets. Okay, those are typically like 40 bucks. Now, even after these are seed-only exposures, right? Do not have magnets under them currently as they're germinating. Done this experiment countless times. It's always replicatable by anybody. Now, you do need a larger magnet. You do need a more powerful magnet. You can't be using fridge magnets or hard drive magnets, okay? Even a little 1-inch cube magnet, which you can't see it, but it's way back there, like it's a 1-inch by 1-inch cube magnet. I think they're like $22. You can use those. And I have to show you the special way to tape the seeds on there, because a magnet is dissectable. Its field dynamics as far as magnetodielectric phase shift. It's either rarefaction on the North Pole, which causes stunted growth, and magnetodielectric compression. You could basically think of expansion or dilation in growth. It affects animals, insects, embryos, hatching eggs. Actually, a North Pole of a magnet to the centrifugal edge will actually slow cancer growth. This isn't my opinion or belief. This is hardcore fact. As I told you, those two books were written by Rawls and Davis. Those were suppressed works. Now, there's some used copies out there, but basically 30-40 years of their work is suppressed. Now, they had no idea what magnetism was or how it worked. They had no idea what the phase shift was. They had no idea about any of that stuff. They just knew that when they did this and they did that, you got these fantastic results. But I've discovered why it works, how it works, what it is, so on and so forth. I've actually gotten underneath the hood of magnetism and magnets. So now, let's not keep you waiting. Let's look at 25 hours of growth. You actually soak the seeds for 8 hours the first time. You pour them out, you wash them, and then 3 or 4 times a day you actually wash them and swirl them a bit, and you drain out the water. So, always turns out the same. Let's take a look at the North Pole exposed seeds. There's some water dripping on the table here. I don't know if you could see this, but we have almost no seed sprouting. If I were to actually give it an estimate, I would say it is less than 5%. You should probably be able to see it there in the jar. You'd be looking for the break in the shell of these sprout seeds, and it is definitely less than 5%. Now, this is a magnetodielectric rarefaction, stunted growth from divergent centrifugal magnetism along the outside peripheral edge of a neodymium iron boron. It also could be done with a samarium cobalt or a strong ferrite. Neodymium iron boron in 50 Gauss, 2-inch by 2-inch by 1-inch. Now, let's look at the same seeds from the same pack, blah, 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 blah. Same exposure on the South Pole. The jar is kind of heated up due to the lamp, so I've got a little fogging on the jar there, but I think you can see it. I have those seeds. Now, this is only 25 hours now. It's going to get drastic at about the 3-day mark. And right at the end, there's 3 spurts on seed-only exposure on sesame seed. I mean, on these particular seeds, not sesame seeds. Talking about sprout seeds here. I don't know why I said sesame seeds there for a second. They look like sesame seeds. They're sprouts. And if I were to give it, now the North Pole exposure was about 5%, but I don't know, since it's murky in here because of the lights, you can't see it that well. I don't want to open up the top, but I think you can to a certain degree. If I were to actually give it a percentage, it is roughly about 65 to 70%. The seeds have broken through their hulls and they're starting to, the sprouts are sprouting. So we're talking a spread difference here, or to say 70%. It's actually higher than, actually looks more like 75 or 80%. So we have essentially between the North Pole and the South Pole seeds here. Now this is just magnetic exposure only for 4 hours. Seed only exposure. We got 5% sprouting, germinating on the North Pole, and on the South Pole there, a rough estimate, 75 to 80%. So we're talking 5% and 80% here. Wow. Wow. Here they are. They're just sprouting alfalfa. Okay, organic, all came from the same package. Doesn't matter who you buy them from. Doesn't matter what your source is. You could grow beans, carrots, tomatoes, don't give a frig what it is. But my discovery as to the magnetodielectric rarefaction, technically, this is relational. It has to do with the geomagnetic precession of the polarity of magnetism. But it's also directly related to electromagnetic retardation, which general relativity got completely wrong. You can actually read about it in the book by Professor, 2 doctorate degrees, Dr. Oleg D. Jefimenko. He didn't discover this. He talks about electromagnetic retardation. I'm the first person to discover how a magnet works and what magnetism is. It is a reciprocating precessional hyperboloid. All of these discoveries are copyright of the book, my book, Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism, for 2014, Ken L. Wheeler. Someone was asking me today, I've already made several videos about it, but wanted to go over it really quick, and he was talking about, well, what is polarity? And everything we know about magnetism, of course, dates all the way back to the ancient Greeks and earlier. I don't know actually how much you know about magnetism, whether it's a lot or a little. I mean, we all think of magnetic attraction and magnetic repulsion, but of course there is no such thing as magnetic attraction or magnetic repulsion. It is dielectric voidance and countervoidance. Here we have a neodymium iron boron, 1 inch by 1 inch cube. A magnet does not have poles at all. Anybody that actually knows much about magnets will tell you one thing, that there is no such thing as a north pole and a south pole in a magnet. Well, what does that mean? That means if I had a slicer, and of course this thing is ceramic, you can't really cut it like a piece of bologna, but if I had a slicer and I was able to make 1,000,000 thin slices of this magnet, every thin slice will have a north pole and a south pole. What does that mean? That means this part right here, which is incorrectly called the block wall, which is a description, not an explanation, is the dielectric inertial plane. It is the plane of inertia. We're talking about IA here, inertia and acceleration. Everything over here is force and motion. Phase shift. Now, when you talk about magnetic attraction, magnetic repulsion, there is no such thing. We think of gravity as something separate, but gravity doesn't exist. But if you tell that to someone superficially, they will obviously look at you, you know, like you're walking around naked in a Speedo or something. What do you mean gravity doesn't exist, you know? Fall out of an airplane. I mean, aren't you the guy that fell out of an airplane thousands of times? Gravity, of course, does exist. It will kill you. But what is gravity? Gravity is merely a description of mass with mutual attraction, but that is dielectric voidance. There is no force or motion involved in gravity. It's the same thing with so-called quote-unquote magnetic attraction. They say, well, unlike poles attract, well, it has nothing to do with attraction. Magnetism is the dielectric field. It is dielectric voidance. It is the removal, the erasure of space. We talk about mutual attraction of inverse polarity. We are talking about phase shift cancellation, the erasure of space and time. That is electromagnetic retardation. That is the reason for the phase shift. But what people don't understand is you actually have to combine several things to understand what magnetism is. First, you have to know what a hyperboloid is. I can't explain it here in more than a few minutes, but this is a hyperboloid. You have to know what a hypertrochoid is. You have to know what reciprocation is. A magnet is a coherent field of a reciprocating precessional hyperboloid. We all know what, at least most of you do. We talk about the Earth's axis. Here's the Earth. It sits on this axis, but every, 23,000 years it precesses back and forth. This is also known in magnetism. You have to actually know these frequencies to design magnetic resonance imaging. It's called the L'Amour frequency. L'Amour frequency is the frequency of precession of a magnetic, they call it a magnetic moment. That doesn't mean anything. It is necessitated geomagnetic precession. So you have a hyperboloid that is precessing. It is projective geometry. There are only two principles in the universe. The universe is divinely simplex because Mother Nature is not an insane cross-eyed crack whore as general relativity would like you to believe. There's only two principles in the universe, force and motion and inertia and acceleration. Both of these are but one thing only, i.e. the ether, force and motion, magnetism. Two principles in the universe, that is it. Mother Nature does not do math. Okay? Understanding field mechanics is not simple, but it is simplex. It is extremely complicated, but it is also simplex at the same time. You only have one field and four field modalities. Over here you have magnetism, over here you have dielectricity, electricity. Phi times psi equals Q, Planck, and electrification. Down here what you think is gravity is merely the mutual attraction acceleration of mass towards each other. Two masses right here. Gravity is nothing other than dielectric avoidance. That is no different than the extremely strong, what you incorrectly, and goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks and Babylonia, referred to in lodestones when they're actually observing lodestones, what you incorrectly call, and what we still incorrectly call magnetic attraction, does not exist. Magnetism is a force and motion divergence. Dielectricity, i.e. the dielectric inertial plane, you see this magnet right here? Okay, there is no polarity. Cut this magnet 1,000,000 times, and each little slice will have a north pole and a south pole. It is a necessitated field pressure mediation. It must be, by necessity, a pressure mediation between dielectricity and magnetism, force and motion, inertia and acceleration. It is no different than what a plumber understands about water going downhill, except we're talking about field pressure mediation, the extrapolation of same. So what does a magnet have? Does it have poles? Here's South Pole, here's the North Pole? No, because every single slice, if you cut it, what happens? The center moves to the center of every slice. Therefore, if a magnet doesn't have poles, what is a magnet? Right here, the dielectric inertial plane. Polarity. You have to define polarity. Not descriptions, but true explanation. Polarity is the inverse of this. Counter space, i.e. inertia. The opposite of this on either pole, force and motion. Okay? This is how Mother Nature draws a line. This is how we draw a line. That's not how Mother Nature draws a line. This is Mother Nature's line. This is the only way Mother Nature knows how to draw a line. The inverse of counter space. Over here we have the creation of space. There's no such things as fields in space. Space is a posterior attribute to the creation of force and motion. Okay? Keep trying to reify space as something that does something. Tesla called this idiocy. Space is neither a field nor a force. It acts on nothing and it does nothing. So ultimately, in actual denotation and explanation, a magnet does not have poles. Never did, never was, because it is inseparable. You can't cut out a north pole. Well, I'm going to cut the magnet right in the middle. Doesn't matter. You cut the magnet right in the middle, guess what happens? This now becomes the middle over here. The middle of that magnet is counter space. Okay, everything over here is force and motion. It is that simple. There's no such thing as magnetic attraction or repulsion. We're going to continue on with the seed experiments. I'm going to give you near daily updates, and you're going to see what I was talking about. Replicate this yourself. I don't give a damn if you believe me or not. Anybody, everybody can replicate this. It works. Period. Hello folks, I'm going to show you an experiment that I've actually conducted many times, and the results are always the same. By the way, the two books in front of you, especially the one on the left, if you want to actually know about genuine... I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. Far from it. I don't actually like conspiracy theory morons. Most of the time they're half-wits and lunatics. But here's a book that actually was suppressed by the federal government. The research of Albert Lloyd Davis and Walter C. Rawls, Jr. Here are the two gentlemen on the back. They did many decades worth of biological experiments on the basis of magnetism. While they themselves never figured out what magnetism is or how a magnet works like I did in my book, they did, however, perform countless thousands of empirical experiments on creatures like chickens hatching, seed experiments, seed-only experiments, as I'm going to do in a three-part video here. I'm going to do some seed-only exposure. Like these little alfalfa seeds only require like 3 to 4 hours of magnetic exposure. I'm going to expose 1 packet to a South Pole reciprocation and 1 packet to a North Pole reciprocation. They never actually figured out why there's actually a phase shift. They didn't even know there was a phase shift, but they knew endlessly, and they did perform endless thousands of experiments over the decades on animals and worms and whatnot. Like the North Pole species of chickens were very sensitive and clean and ate sparingly. Here, when North Pole treated chicken eggs were slow to hatch from 1 to 2 days. Same is actually true of seed. I've done a lot of seed experiments. Stunted growth pattern, therefore we have 2 types of energy, one that arrests life and growth and development, and one that increases life and growth and development. Also, North Pole, not centripetal, but North Pole centrifugal magnetic divergence can actually be used to arrest cancer. That's something that nobody else talks about. I mean, this isn't quackery. You know, the little idiotic bracelets that have tiny little neodymium magnets in it, they don't do anything. They actually increase blood flow very slightly due to the iron in your blood, but you know, all the magical mumbo jumbo and the nonsense of people wearing magnets, I mean, those little bitty suckers, they don't really do much. We're talking about some large beasts like the one I have back here. It's a 50 Gauss neodymium iron boron, or it could be a samarium cobalt. However, the higher the Gauss rating, the tighter the field is. It is necessitated field pressure mediation. But I'm going to do a 3-part or 4-part video series that I'm going to show you along the way. Seed growth takes basically 7 days to grow alfalfa seeds, and I'm going to show you the drastic difference in change and growth from South Pole. And this is going to be seed exposure only. These seeds are bone dry. And it applies to tomato seeds. Actually, like South Pole exposed tomato seeds come out with very low acidic content. This has been replicated over and over and over again. This book is actually extremely hard to find. If you want actually the links, the information on these books, send me an email. But this actually is a genuine government suppressed book. This book is a tough broad to find. This one actually is too, but a number of copies were released. There's actually a long story behind the suppression of these 2 works. I mean, these guys, basically their life work. Now, while they didn't know, you know, nobody until myself came along, nobody actually understood how magnetism worked, what it was, and they had no idea why all these thousands of experiments on animals and worms and chicken and egg growth and seed exposure and like plant growth, why there's such a huge difference between North Pole and South Pole exposure. But there is, but they didn't understand that, but I did, and I do. And of course I'm outlining that in the 4th edition of my book. And all of this discovery, by the way, is copyright 11/2014, Uncovering Missing Secrets of Magnetism by myself, Ken Wheeler. Stunted growth, they're talking about worms they actually stumbled upon this by accidentally exposing worms. Treated plant seeds, earthworms, larger plant residues, and exposure to South Pole with smaller plants resulted from the exposure to the North Pole. All my experiments showed the exact same thing that these guys did under their many countless years of experimentation. South Pole magnetic energies affected sharp rise in protein acid development, active transfer, physical strength and development. North Pole treated worms presented findings unlike that of the South Pole worms. North Pole exposed worms were acted upon to reduce food intake, lessening protein amino acid exchange, lower digestion, basically like stunted growth. And the reason, I could actually go over all the experiments that they did. I mean, just endless biological experimentation. But the point is that it has to actually exist at a ratio of 5 to 1. The phase shift, you can actually see it under the ferrocell, and I talked about this in a prior video, that animals actually see, they navigate, they're actually able to see to the cryptochromes in their eyes. Since the Earth's magnetic North Pole is in the South Geographic Pole, there actually is a red shift in the light towards the South Geographic Pole and a blue shift in the light towards the North Geographic Pole, which is where the Earth's South Magnetic Compass is. Here's an experiment I'm going to show you. It's a picture that I took. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate this again for you. Over here we have North Pole exposed seeds, they're very mealy. They taste horrible. They almost taste like somebody sprayed some sort of nasty, almost like Windex on them. They're horrible tasting. The alfalfa seeds on the right are robust and green. You ever tasted like really, really fresh salad, you know, just plucked out of the garden, and it's just extremely robust, and you could just actually taste all the minerals in it. These are South Pole. This is seed-only exposure. This experiment replicated countless times. The little red sticker indicates the North Pole. But the discovery of how this works, even though Rawls and Davis did decades worth of experimentation on biologicals, they didn't know why it worked. They didn't know what magnetism was. They didn't know anything about phase shift. And I'm going to replicate this experiment for you over the next few days, and I'm going to show you the results along the way. And these are genuine suppressed works by the U.S. government. No ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, this is the one time, you know, 99.9% of conspiracy theories are false BS. Obviously, that's the case, but this is the one time they actually are suppressed. The FDA actually suppressed these works. Here we have a magnet. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. And here we have it along the dielectric inertial plane. And I'm going to show you here. This is a magnetic viewing film. If you can actually see the white strip there along the middle of the magnet, that's the dielectric inertial plane. Over here we have the North Pole, and over here we have the South Pole of the magnet. Technically, a magnet does not have poles. Pole is the denotation of space. How humans keep things really simple for you. How humans draw a line is like this, obviously. Okay, there's a line. Well, how Mother Nature draws a line is like this. This is Mother Nature's line. Right here we have the DIP, the dielectric inertial plane, or counter space, i.e. inertia. Over here we have F and M, space. We have force in motion, and everything centripetal is inertia and acceleration. Same thing on a magnet. And let me show you what's going on biologically that affects this, and it has nothing to do with the hydrous nature of hydrous oxide, i.e. water, which right here is 108 degrees, and here it's 36 on 36. Two hydrogen molecules here. We're talking about dry seeds that have almost no water content. It's actually affecting the genetic nature of the seeds before they become hydrated. Right over here we have the oxygen molecule. By the way, this specific geometry is a ratio of 1, 1, and 5, by the way, with an incommensurable of 1 over 5. But let's talk about the magnet right here. Here we go. Let's get our magnet. I'm actually going to pretend that the magnet is right here. I'm going to draw our magnet. Okay, let's get the magnet out of the way because that's a big dangerous sucker. On a Gauss meter, you'll actually see that the centrifugal is the highest Gauss rating, also centripetal at the point of either pole. Here we have the North Pole, here we have the South Pole. It occurs at a ratio of 1 to 5, exactly like an egg. It's necessitated pressure mediation. And it looks just like this. This discovery is mine, 11/2014, uncovering the missing secrets of magnetism. What is a magnet? What is magnetism specifically? It is a reciprocating precessional hyperboloid. Here we have the South Pole, and here we have a ratio of centrifugal divergence of phi, and over here we have a centrifugal divergence on the North Pole of 1 over phi, which would be 0.618. Over here would be 1.618 ratio of phi and 1 over phi, which means over here on the North Pole we have red shift, and the South Pole we have blue shift. But let me erase some of this to make it really simple. Draw the magnet again. South Pole here, North Pole here. Here we go. Obviously this isn't a perfect egg shape, but you kind of get the point. What we have here is we have spatio-temporal compression on the South Pole, and we have on the North Pole, since we have a ratio up here of 1 to 5 versus the South Pole, which is at phi, the entire system, of course, is 1. Pressure mediation is equalized out. It extrapolates this reciprocating precessional hyperboloid. That is my discovery, by the way. Ken Wheeler, 2014, Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism, extrapolates out a hypertrochoid. People's like, what is a hypertrochoid? It's like, well, have you ever seen a spirograph pattern? Yes, i.e. a torus. Here we have inertia. Just pretend this is indivisibly thin. Okay, here we have inertia, i.e. counter space, i.e. the ether, projective geometry. Okay, here we have inertia and acceleration. It's invisible. Just pretend this is infinitely thin. What is magnetism? This is magnetism, force and motion, or as Faraday called it, Michael Faraday, he called it the dielectric field. This is what you see under the ferrocell right here. You see that spirograph pattern? A toroidal, a hypertrochoid. Got it? Force, inertia, and acceleration. Force and motion. This is all reciprocating, okay? Reciprocating and pulsating. Even have the frequency of the magnetic precession. It's called the L'Amour frequency, by the way. Extremely high frequency. But the point is that we're talking about before these seeds are hydrated, that there is a ratio. Let me see if I can draw a better egg here. That's just going to show the centrifugal field only. The South Pole here, North Pole here. This is centrifugal, and here is centripetal, which is returning at the center of the North Pole there. And here we have the centrifugal of the North Pole. So we have a ratio of phi and 1 over phi. Simplex magnetodielectric pressure mediation. It is necessitated extrapolation of the dielectric field out of the coherent system that you call a magnet. And it has a phase shift. Red shift on the North Pole, blue shift on the South Pole. Animals can see this. Okay, in the cryptochromes. As I told you, that huge honking magnet that hurts my eyes, because humans still have cryptochromes in their eyes. This is my discovery, and this is the reason they never figured that out. Rawls and Davis, I mean, nobody figured it out, but they did countless thousands of biological experiments, and they're always reproducible. It's like, well, you know, show me the results. You can reproduce the results yourself, okay? It is that simple. I'm going to go on to video number 2 here and talk about this a little bit further. I'm going to actually subdivide this into sections. But we're going to be talking about force and motion, inertia and acceleration, and the phase shift of the magnetodielectric spatial-temporal spread differential between the North Pole and the South Pole, and why that affects biological growth. It is really actually divinely simple. Mother Nature is very simple. Everything is force and motion and inertia and acceleration. Unlike general relativity and quantum mechanics that would forward to you that Mother Nature is an insane cross-eyed crack whore, Mother Nature does not do that. She is very simple. Things are divinely simple. Not necessarily simplex, but they are simple. Catch up on video number 2, and it's going to be a 3 or 4 part series on the seed growth here. Catch you. Okay, this is part 2. I have already started the seed experiments. I will post another video for you a couple days along in the germination of the seeds. We're actually going to be creating, it sounds like Jack and the Beanstalk, right? We're actually going to be talking about magic seeds, not literally magic, but we're going to be talking about spatial-temporal rarefaction, spatial-temporal compression due to the magnetodielectric phase shift that affects biological growth, not only in dry seeds, but plants and animals, but occurs at a ratio of 1 to 5, shaped just like an egg. Up here we'd have 1, down here we'd have an area of 5, South Pole here, North Pole here. Obviously inverse necessitated pressure mediation, 1 to 5, but ultimately we have 1 over phi, and we have over here phi. Centrifugal magnetic divergence, which is the loss, the necessitated reciprocation, the projective geometry of what defines magnetism and the magnet. Of course, taking a look at this magnet before it became a magnet and it was magnetized, you know, it still had every bit of its magnetic capacity within it. So what changed? There was no quantification change, rather a qualification change, and that qualification is magnetodielectric coherency. The easiest way for you to understand a magnet would be like a field laser. We both know, hopefully you know the difference between coherent and incoherent light. Coherent light being a laser. Why is a 5-watt light bulb no good to read by? By a 5-watt laser will burn a hole in your ass. Okay? Nobody takes any notice of this object before it has been magnetized by magnetizing coils, increasing dielectric capacitance in the neodymium iron boron or the ferrite or the samarium cobalt magnet. But we have to differentiate out descriptions from explanations. What is occurring is magnetodielectric coherency. And we talk about aligned domains, but that's still only a description. That's not an explanation of what defines magnetism. Magnet itself, in denotation, is nothing other than the coherency of the magnetodielectric lattice of the neodymium iron boron ceramic that sits here before you. It's an N50 Gauss. By the way, the higher the Gauss, the more shallow the field, and that is like necessitated pressure mediation, because on either magnet here we actually have a centrifugal divergence and a centripetal convergence. It's like creating an extremely powerful outspout shower, but also increasing the vacuum pressure at the centripetal point of return. What it does is it actually shrinks the field. That's why higher Gauss magnets, you can actually whip out a Gauss meter and you can actually notice that on really, really powerful magnets, it's like, well, this magnet's really powerful, but the field is really shallow. In other words, you don't actually feel the quote-unquote magnetic pull that we BS denotate and connotation denotation as attraction and repulsion. There is no such thing as magnetic attraction and repulsion. It is dielectric voidance and counter-avoidance, due to phase shift of the necessitated pressure mediation of what is magnetism. Michael Faraday, so very long ago, referred to magnetism as the dielectric field. But what is dielectricity? I can show you what the dielectricity is of this magnet. That is the inertial plane of this magnet. You see it right there, the white strip along the middle, right in the middle of the magnet? It is no different than this toroid. No different. Here we have inertia and acceleration. We have still. Now, quantum mechanics and general relativity, the idiots have actually replaced the word ether, which they hate, with another word, which is exactly the same thing. They replaced it with quantum fluid. And they will, of course, admit that, well, we don't know what 70% of the universe is, so we're just going to call it dark matter. They've inserted the word matter, i.e. atomistic thought. It's not matter. It is inertia. It is the ether. The one most scary word, if you ever want to piss off, I don't care how smart they think they are, how smart you think they are, if you ever want to piss off someone that's a supposed expert of general relativity or quantum mechanics, ask them to find one word and their assholes will pucker so tight it will create diamonds. Define this one word. They cannot do it because they know it has nothing to do with particles. They know a field, denotation, and connotation is particle-free. Everything in the universe is field-based. The one thing that you will never find an explanation or a denotation of anywhere in this world, except for me, I'm actually writing the book on it, is this word, field. Fields have nothing to do with particles. They're particle-free. The ancient Greek word kora. Okay, kora. What is the kora? What is the denotation of a kora? Field. Okay? Fields have nothing to do with particles. But everything in general relativity is the rationalization that there is something. Space is neither a force nor a field. It can act on nothing. Tesla actually referred to, Tesla called Einstein a long-haired, fuzzy-haired crank, which he was, and everything that actually Einstein ever wrote was stolen from one of two people, Roger Boscovich and Poincaré. And Tesla said countless times that the notion that space, which has no properties, can act on anything or do anything was absurd, was ridiculous. He said this ideology was doomed to failure, and of course he is correct. So that's the one word that is never defined. Anyway, we're looking at the dielectric inertial plane of the magnet. Let's zoom in. And you can see it here. You see that white line right along the middle? That's the dielectric inertial plane. That is the point of zero magnetic reciprocation. It is the null point. As I told you before, Mother Nature doesn't draw a line like this. This is how we draw a line. Okay? Mother Nature doesn't do that. Here's how Mother Nature draws a line. This is Mother Nature's line, okay? Right here we have CS, counter space, and over here we have space and time, ST. We have magnetic reciprocation, we have precession, it's also called the Lamour frequency, how a magnet works and what magnetism is. A reciprocating precessional hyperboloid discovery, 2014, uncovering the missing secrets of magnetism. This is Mother Nature's counter space right here. Just pretend that is indivisibly finite, invisible, and here we have force and motion, i.e. magnetism. That is the hypertrochoid. And if you actually look down on it, you can see the hypertrochoid. Or some of you would actually call it a torus or toroid. Okay, and then imagine this central spot is actually infinitely small instead of the large gap that it is right here. Okay, inertia and acceleration, force and motion. Reciprocating, precessing, and it is a hyperboloid. Describing a hyperboloid to you would actually take a while. Is actually defining space and force and motion. You can actually see what I just showed you here. Remember? You see the toroidal here? The toroid, i.e. the spirograph pattern, the hypertrochoid. This is an actual magnet underneath the ferrocell. You see the same pattern right there? Oh my God, yes. That is how nature shoots out and drains, for lack of a better analogy for you to quickly understand, shoots out and drains the loss of ether, i.e. inertia. It is a force and motion divergence. Discovery, copyright 2013, Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism, 2nd edition. Okay, this is the real Mother Nature. Inertia and acceleration, force and motion, space and counterspace, charge and discharge, centrifugal and centripetal, divergence and convergence. Here is the cross-eyed, insane crack whore of general relativity. Virtual particles, warp space insanity, negative momentum particles, unqualified quantum multiverse, time-traveling force particles. Mother Nature uses calculus and a calculator. Big bangs and black holes. Space, which is neither a force nor a field, acts on things and does things. Insanity! Insanity. Tesla said this was an insanity. Oliver Heaviside said this was an insanity. C.P. Steinmetz said this was an insanity. T.J.C., a renowned physicist and field theorist, they all said the notion that everything of general relativity and quantum mechanics was insanity, and they are correct. You need to look up some of the works of Eric P. Dollard, by the way. This is how magnetism actually looks. It's acted upon by light. This is magnetism actually affecting light underneath the ferrocell. Okay? A magnet does not have poles. A magnet has the inverse of this. Inertia, i.e. the ether. What is the inverse of inertia? It is this, force and motion. 99, actually that's not it, I was going to say 99.9. 100% of the visible universe, the inner atomic diameter, inner atomic radius of every atom in the universe is held up by magnetodielectricity. In other words, that which gives volume to every atom in the universe is defined by one thing. Magnetism. One thing only. Okay, that which gives noumena definition as phenomena. Literally, as far as existence, of course, meaning existence, to exist outside of oneself, i.e. force and motion, i.e. to identify with phenomena rather than noumena. Anyway, getting back to the seeds. I've started the seed experiments. We're going to be doing alfalfa seeds. I've performed this experiment many times. Ask me about these particular works, because these are actually suppressed works by our own government. No lie there, no conspiracy BS. This is the one time where it's actually true. This work is actually genuinely suppressed. Very, very few copies of it exist. What you need to understand that the ancient Greeks and Platonists understood when it came to geometry. Okay? Actually, I got some magnets underneath there. Okay? Geometry. What precedes geometry? What gives definition to geometry? Force and motion, inertia and acceleration. What precedes geometry? What is geometry denotatively? Geometry is this. This is something they never teach you about in school. Geometry. What does it matter if it's a square, a cube, a rhombus, this shape, any shape. All geometry is this. If you don't understand this, You are an idiot, but you're an idiot just like every other person is an idiot because you weren't taught this stuff in school. Effect. What is the cause? What is the precedent cause of that? It's not literally a point. It's something that actually precedes a point. Projective geometry. Okay, how am I going to draw a square? Talking about geometry. Now, we are getting into, oh my god, here we go. We got a cube. Effect. Right here we have cause. Projective geometry. Non-Euclidean geometry. What you need to understand, non-Euclidean geometry would be what? This would be inertia. And over here, effect, this would equal force. It would equal magnetism. Magnetism. The loss of inertia is the reciprocation of the loss of that inertia as extrapolated out in the reciprocating precessional hyperboloid, which defines absolutely every atom in the universe. Okay? You can look up any book. Even the assholes of quantum mechanics and general relativity will admit to you that an atom is 99.9999999% empty space. Well, that's bullshit. Actually, what props up and gives definition and volume to every atom, that 99.99999%, is this big word right here. Magnetism. What is a magnet? What is magnetism? Denotation versus connotation. We're not talking about descriptions, we're talking about explanations. All geometry is effect. Square, cube, sphere, blah, 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 doesn't matter. This is an effect. What precedes the effect? That's what we want to know about. That's what the ancient Platonists and the Pythagoreans were interested in. This is the source right here. It's even smaller than this. It's actually so small it doesn't exist. It's inertia. Here is non-Euclidean geometry. Here is Euclidean geometry, force and motion. Get it?